Snow drifted past the bakery window as I wiped flour from my palms. The phone buzzed in my apron pocket. Mom's name lit up the screen. I smiled, answering quickly. "Hey, Mom." Her voice came through calm and measured. "Mara, honey, we've decided to keep Christmas small this year. Just immediate family." The words hung in the air like frost. I gripped the counter, my smile frozen in place. "Oh," I managed. That's fine. You understand, don't you? Your brothers are bringing their families, and Aunt Lydia's coming with the twins. The house will be packed." I was her daughter, her firstborn, but somehow, I wasn't immediate family anymore. "Of course," I whispered. "Have a wonderful time." "You're so understanding, sweetheart. That's why we love you." The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to silence. The dough I'd been kneading sat abandoned on the counter, deflated and gray. My coworker glanced over, concern creasing her weathered face. "Everything okay, honey?" I nodded, forcing brightness into my voice. "Actually, I finally get Christmas off this year." The lie tasted bitter. Through the frosted window, families hurried past with wrapped gifts and laughter that would never include me. I finished my shift in a daze, going through the motions of measuring, mixing, baking. The familiar rhythm usually comforted me, but tonight every movement felt hollow. The word family echoed in my skull, reshaping itself into something ugly. When had I stopped being family? Was it when I stayed behind to care for Grandma Rose while everyone else pursued their dreams? When I chose the small-town bakery over law school? When I stopped trying to compete with my brother's accomplishments? He touched my shoulder as we closed up. "You sure you're all right?" "Just tired," I said, locking the register. Outside, the town square glowed with Christmas lights strung between lampposts. Children squealed near the ice rink. Couples strolled arm in arm, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. The whole world seemed wrapped in warmth and belonging. I walked to my car alone, keys jingling in my numb fingers. The parking lot was nearly empty now, just oil stains on snow and the distant sound of carolers. I sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine, watching my breath fog the windshield. My phone buzzed. A group text from my mother to the family chat. "Can't wait for Christmas. House is almost ready." 3 enthusiastic responses followed immediately. I wasn't mentioned. My name is Mara Whitley, and I've spent 28 years being the daughter who understood. The one who didn't complain. The one who made things easier for everyone else. When Grandma Rose got sick, I was 19 and halfway through my freshman year at college. Mom called crying, saying she couldn't manage the hospital visits and her job and everything else. My brothers were too busy with their own lives. Someone needed to help. I came home that weekend and never left. Grandma lived another 3 years. By then, my college fund had been spent on medical bills, and my dreams of becoming a teacher had faded like old photographs. But I'd held Grandma's hand through every doctor's appointment, every frightening night, every small victory. "You're such a blessing," everyone said. What they meant was, "You're convenient." After Grandma passed, I got the job at Ember Bakery. It wasn't what I'd planned, but I discovered I loved the quiet magic of turning flour and water into something that made people smile. Bread doesn't judge. It doesn't compare you to your more successful siblings. I rented a small apartment above the hardware store and built a simple life. A peaceful life. A lonely life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the heating pipes clank and watching shadows from the streetlight dance across my ceiling. At midnight, I gave up and drove to the bakery. The building was dark and cold. I flipped on the lights and turned up the heat, then pulled out the box of Christmas decorations from the storage closet. If I wasn't celebrating with family, I could at least make the bakery festive for customers. I strung lights around the windows and hung paper snowflakes from the ceiling. In the corner, I assembled the small artificial tree we put out every year. One strand of lights refused to work, a single dead bulb somewhere in the chain. I spent 20 minutes checking each one before giving up. The broken lights felt like a metaphor. Outside, the town glowed golden and red with holiday cheer. Inside, I stood alone in the humming fluorescent light, hanging ornaments on a half-lit tree. My reflection stared back from the dark window, a ghost in an apron. I found myself humming Silent Night to fill the silence. The song my grandmother used to sing while baking her famous cinnamon rolls. The memory made my chest ache. The next morning, I arrived at 5 to start the day's baking. As I mixed the first batch of dough, I noticed someone standing outside the window, peering in through the glass. An elderly man, probably in his 70s, with a torn wool coat and kind eyes that seemed to hold decades of stories. His shoes were held together with duct tape, and snow dusted his gray hair. I wiped my hands and opened the door. Cold air rushed in. "Good morning," I said. "We're not quite open yet, but coming out of the cold." He smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "I don't want to be trouble." "No trouble at all." I grabbed a fresh roll from the cooling rack and handed it to him. "On the house. Coffee." "You're very kind." "It's Christmas season. Kindness should be free, right?" He accepted the coffee with trembling hands. "Kindness is never free, young lady. Someone always pays. The question is whether it's a price or an investment." The philosophical response caught me off guard. Most homeless folks who came by just wanted food and warmth, not conversation. Something about his eyes suggested depths I couldn't fathom. "What's your name?" I asked. "Tomas." He took a sip of coffee, savoring it like fine wine. "And yours?" "Mara. A beautiful name. It means bitter in Hebrew, but also beloved." Tomas became a morning regular. Every day at 6, he appeared at the window with his paper cup of coins, exact change for a small coffee. He'd sit at the corner table by the radiator and watch me work, occasionally offering observations that seemed too profound for casual conversation. "You bake like someone who remembers love," he said one morning. I laughed, embarrassed. "I just follow the recipes." "No." He shook his head slowly. "Recipes are instructions. You add something else. Something that can't be measured." The other regulars teased me about my secret admirer. Mrs. Chun, who came in every morning for a bran muffin, winked and whispered that Tomas watched me the way her late husband used to watch her garden. But it wasn't romantic. It felt more like being seen for the first time in years. Like someone had finally noticed I existed beyond my usefulness. One morning, I found a note tucked under the sugar jar at his usual table. The handwriting was shaky but careful. "You bake like someone who remembers love." The same words he'd spoken. I folded the note and slipped it into my apron pocket, where it stayed warm against my heart throughout the day. I never mentioned it. Neither did he. But something had shifted between us. 2 weeks before Christmas, an envelope arrived at the bakery addressed to the kind hands at Ember Bakery. Inside was $1,500 in cash and a note, "For the rent you're worried about." I stared at the money, hands shaking. The bakery's owner, Mr. Delgado, had mentioned he might have to raise the rent or sell the building. I'd been lying awake nights wondering how we'd manage. Someone had been paying attention. Someone had heard my worried conversations with B about finding another job if the bakery closed. "Who sent this?" B asked, examining the envelope. "No return address. Just says it's from a silent investor who believes in what we do here. Must be someone local who knows the situation." I thought of Tomas, but dismissed the idea. A homeless man with taped-together shoes couldn't have $1,500 to give away. Could he? That evening, I stayed late to reorganize the storage room and count inventory. As I worked, I found myself humming the melody Tomas sometimes sang, a hauntingly beautiful tune without words. It reminded me of snow falling and warm fires and being held when you're scared. I realized I was crying. The blizzard hit on a Wednesday night. Snow fell so thick you couldn't see across the street. The bakery closed early, and I spent the evening loading unsold bread into boxes. "What are you doing?" B asked, pulling on her coat. "Taking these to the shelter. They'll just go stale here." "In this weather? Mora, you'll freeze." "I'll be careful." The drive took twice as long as usual, my windshield wipers struggling against the snow. The shelter was warm and crowded, families huddled together, the smell of instant coffee and wet wool thick in the air. And there, in the corner, Tomas was handing out blankets from a cardboard box. He looked up and grinned. "You again. I should have known." I could say the same thing. I set down the bread boxes. You volunteer here? When I can. These folks need more than a meal. They need to know someone remembers they exist. We worked side by side, distributing bread and blankets. A young mother with 2 small children thanked me 3 times, her eyes brimming with grateful tears. An old veteran clasped my hand and wouldn't let go. Later, Tomas and I sat in the shelter's back office, sharing tea in paper cups. The radiator clanked and hissed, fighting against the cold. You didn't have to come out in this storm, he said. Neither did you. He smiled into his tea. I told you. Kindness circles back. You give, and somehow the world finds a way to give back. Does it? The bitterness in my voice surprised me, because I've been giving my whole life, and I'm spending Christmas alone. The story spilled out. My mother's call. The family gathering I wasn't invited to. Years of being the convenient daughter, the one who sacrificed and understood and never complained. Tomas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. The world owes you something beautiful, Mara, he said finally. Don't stop believing that. The universe keeps tabs on hearts like yours. That sounds nice, but I don't think it's true. You will. He patted my hand with his weathered fingers. You will. We sat in comfortable silence, watching snow pile against the windows. In that moment, surrounded by strangers in a crowded shelter, I felt less alone than I had in my own family. Tomas didn't come to the bakery the next morning. His corner table sat empty, the chair pushed in exactly as he always left it. His coffee cup waited on the counter, the one I always set aside for him. He didn't come the next day either. Or the next. By the 3rd day, a cold dread had settled in my stomach. I asked other regulars if they'd seen him. Mrs. Chen mentioned seeing an ambulance near the shelter on Thursday night, but didn't know details. I called the hospital. They couldn't give me information about patients. I called the shelter. They said Tomas hadn't been back since the blizzard. The coffee cup sat on the counter, a monument to absence. I couldn't bring myself to move it. He squeezed my shoulder. Maybe he moved on. Some folks are just passing through. But I knew better. Tomas hadn't been passing through. He'd been present in a way few people ever are. He'd seen me, really seen me, and now he was gone. The world felt colder without him in it. On Christmas Eve morning, a teenage delivery boy arrived at the bakery with a small metal tin box. Delivery from Mara Whitley, he said, checking his phone. That you? Yes. Sign here. The box was old, the kind used for cookies or tea. My name was written on top in Tomas's shaky handwriting. Inside, I found a brass key and a folded note. For Christmas Eve. Follow your heart to where the stars touch the pines. The door will know you. I read it 3 times, my heart pounding. Where did this come from? I asked the boy. Lawyer's office downtown. They paid for expedited delivery. He shrugged. Merry Christmas. After he left, I stood holding the box, turning the key over in my fingers. It was old brass, worn smooth by many hands. The teeth were intricate, suggesting an antique lock. B appeared from the back. What's that? I'm not sure yet. I showed her the note. Do you know anywhere around here where stars touch pines? She thought for a moment. Lake Hollow. Up in the hills. There's an old estate up there, been abandoned for years. Big pine forest around it. My hands were shaking. I need to go. I closed the bakery early, leaving B to handle the last customers. The drive to Lake Hollow took 40 minutes on winding mountain roads. Snow clung to the pine branches, making them bow under white weight. The further I drove, the more isolated I felt. What was I doing, following a cryptic note into the mountains on Christmas Eve? This could be anything. Dangerous. Foolish. But Tomas's voice echoed in my memory. The world owes you something beautiful. The road narrowed to barely more than a path. My car struggled through deep snow. Just as I was about to turn back, I saw it, a gate half buried in frost, the bars twisted with age and weather. A wooden sign hung crooked from one post, the Hollow Lodge. I got out, boots sinking into snow up to my calves. The key felt warm in my palm despite the cold. The gate's lock was old but well maintained, as if someone had been caring for it despite the abandonment. The key slid in perfectly. The lock clicked open. The driveway wound through pine trees heavy with snow. In the dying light, their shadows stretched long and dark across the white ground. My footsteps crunched too loud in the silence. Then I saw it, a massive stone lodge, 3 stories tall with wide windows and a wraparound porch. Smoke curled from one of the chimneys. Someone was here. My heart hammered as I climbed the porch steps. The front door was heavy oak, carved with intricate patterns of leaves and birds. Another old lock waited. The same key fit. Inside, warmth enveloped me. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace large enough to stand in. The room was furnished with worn but comfortable furniture, the kind that invited you to sink in and stay a while. And on the mantel, in a silver frame, was a photograph. Me, handing bread to Tomas through the bakery window. My knees went weak. I grabbed the nearest chair for support. A note lay beside the frame. You kept me warm when I was cold. Let me return the favor. Welcome home, Mara. Hello. My voice echoed through the empty lodge. No one answered. I walked through the ground floor in a daze. The kitchen was industrial-sized but warm and inviting, copper pots hanging from ceiling hooks. The dining room held a table that could seat 20, already set with china and crystal. Everywhere I looked, I saw signs of careful preparation. Fresh flowers in vases, candles waiting to be lit. A Christmas tree in the corner, decorated but unlit. In the library, I found more photographs. Tomas shaking hands with a young couple. Tomas cutting a ribbon at what looked like a business opening. Tomas in a graduation gown, surrounded by smiling faces. This wasn't a homeless man. This was someone who'd had everything and lost it all. Or maybe someone who'd walked away from it all. A door creaked open. I spun around. A woman in a dark coat stood in the doorway, shaking snow from her umbrella. She was probably 60, with silver hair and sharp eyes. You must be Mara, she said. I'm Beatrice Walsh. I was Tomas's attorney. Beatrice hung her coat and gestured for me to sit. The fire cast dancing shadows across her face as she opened a leather briefcase. Tomas Holloway passed away last Thursday, she said gently. Pneumonia, complicated by heart failure. It was peaceful. The words hit like physical blows. I'd known somehow, but hearing it confirmed made it real. Tears spilled down my cheeks. He left very specific instructions, Beatrice continued, pulling out documents. He wanted you here tonight. You and 11 others. Others. They should be arriving soon. Tomas set up a Christmas Eve gathering. His final gift to the people who showed him kindness when he had nothing. I don't understand. He had all this. I gestured around the lodge. Beatrice nodded. He built a successful construction company, invested wisely, and accumulated considerable wealth. Then his wife died, and grief destroyed him. He gave away everything, tried to drink himself to death, and ended up on the streets. What changed? People like you. Strangers who showed him kindness without knowing who he'd been. It gave him purpose again. He spent the last 2 years of his life tracking down everyone who'd helped him, repaying them in ways they'd never expect. I thought of the rent money. The anonymous investor. By 7 o'clock, 12 people filled the lodge's dining room. A young couple who'd let Tomas sleep in their garage during a cold snap. An elderly woman who'd shared her grocery money with him. A teenage boy who'd given him his own coat. Each person told their story. Each one described how Tomas had appeared in their life at exactly the right moment, offering help they desperately needed. A job. A loan. A scholarship. A business opportunity. He told me he was repaying old debts, the elderly woman said, dabbing her eyes. I never imagined he meant my $5 for bus fare. Beatrice stood at the head of the table. Tomas believed that kindness creates a chain. Each act connects to the next, building something stronger than any of us alone. Tonight is the final link in his chain. She pulled out a stack of envelopes, each with a name written in Tomas's handwriting. He prepared individual gifts for each of you, based on what you need most. Not what you want, but what you need. My envelope was last. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were legal documents and a letter. The letter was written in Tomas's careful, shaky handwriting. Dear Mara, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. I hope it involves less cold and more of my beloved wife's lemon cake. I've watched you for months, dear girl. Watched you pour love into bread and kindness into strangers. Watched you sacrifice and give and never ask for anything in return. Watched you be taken for granted by people who should treasure you. You told me you felt invisible. Let me tell you what I saw, a woman with a gift for making people feel valued. For creating warmth in a cold world. For transforming simple ingredients into something that nourishes not just bodies, but souls. Ember Bakery is yours now. I was the silent investor Mr. Delgado sold to 3 months ago. The building, the business, all of it. No more rent. No more uncertainty. It's your canvas now. Create whatever your heart dreams. But that's not all. This lodge is also yours, with one condition. Once a month, open it to people who need warmth and belonging. Feed them. Listen to them. See them the way you saw me. Build the family you deserve, Mara. Not by blood, but by choice. With deepest gratitude, Tomas. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The papers in my hands confirmed everything the letter said. Deed to the bakery building. Deed to the lodge and surrounding property. A trust fund for maintenance and operations. Tomas had given me a life. Around me, others were opening their envelopes. Tears flowed freely. Gasps of shock and gratitude filled the room. The young couple had received enough money to adopt the child they'd been saving for. The teenage boy got a full scholarship to culinary school. He saw what we needed most, someone whispered. Even before we did. Beatrice raised her glass. Tomas wanted me to read you his final words. What we keep dies with us. What we give away lives on. Tonight, we celebrate not endings, but beginnings. You were my teachers. You showed me that wealth isn't counted in dollars, but in human dignity. Pass it on. We toasted with tears streaming down our faces, 12 strangers bound together by one man's gratitude. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady, covering the world in white forgiveness. The story hit the local news the next morning. Mysterious benefactor's Christmas gift transforms lives. By afternoon, it had gone regional. By evening, national outlets were calling. I'd driven back to town at dawn, my head spinning with everything that had happened. When I opened the bakery, a crowd of reporters waited outside with cameras and microphones. Is it true a homeless man left you a fortune? How does it feel to inherit on Christmas? What will you do with the money? Bea appeared, pushing through the crowd to reach me. I've been calling you all night. It's everywhere, Mara. You're famous. I felt paralyzed, overwhelmed. This wasn't what Tomas wanted. He'd wanted quiet kindness, not media spectacle. Please, I told the reporters. This isn't about me. It's about a man who believed kindness matters. That's the only story worth telling. But they didn't leave. The cameras kept rolling. People I'd never met suddenly wanted to be my friend, to tell me their own stories of hardship and need. And somewhere in the chaos, my phone rang. Mom. I stared at the screen, my mother's name flashing. Around me, the crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting a piece of the Christmas miracle girl. I stepped into the bakery's storage room and closed the door. The phone kept ringing. Finally, I answered. Mara. My mother's voice cracked with emotion. Sweetheart, we saw the news. We had no idea. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what, Mom? About the inheritance. About this man who left you everything. We're your family. We should have been the first to know. I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. You told me I wasn't family 2 weeks ago. Silence. That's not. I didn't mean it like that, honey. You know how cramped the house gets. We thought you'd understand. I always understand, Mom. That's what I do. I understand when you need me to give up college. I understand when you need me to miss holidays. I understand when I'm not convenient anymore. That's not fair. Her voice hardened. We've always supported you. Have you? When? When I was caring for Grandma alone. When I was working double shifts at the bakery. When was the last time you asked about my life instead of telling me about my brother's accomplishments? More silence. Then, we're coming up tomorrow. We need to talk about this properly. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove back to the lodge, needing silence and space to process everything. The building felt different knowing it was mine. Every creaking board, every shadowed corner, every window looking out on snow-covered pines, all of it was now my responsibility and my gift. I walked through the room slowly, touching furniture, examining photographs, trying to understand the man who'd given me all this. In his bedroom, I found journals stacked on a nightstand. Years of entries in his careful handwriting. I opened one at random. December 3rd, the girl at the bakery gave me bread again today. I offered to pay, but she refused. She has kind eyes. The kind that see people, not problems. I want to do something for her, but how do you repay someone who gives without expecting return? I flipped forward. December 10th, I've decided. The bakery is perfect for her. She makes it more than a business. She makes it a sanctuary. I'll buy it and give it to her. Maybe then she'll stop worrying about rent and start dreaming bigger. Tears blurred the words. He'd been planning this for months, carefully orchestrating his final gift. The last entry was dated 3 days before he died. I'm ready now. I've repaid my debts. The chain is complete. Maura will carry it forward. She has the heart for it. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. I woke in one of the lodge's guest rooms, wrapped in quilts that smelled faintly of lavender and cedar. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. I made coffee in the industrial kitchen and sat by the fire, watching sunrise paint the snow pink and gold. No obligations. No expectations. Just silence and possibility. My phone buzzed with messages. My brothers, suddenly interested in talking. Friends from high school I hadn't heard from in years. Even my college roommate, who'd stopped returning my calls when I dropped out. Everyone wanted a piece of the Christmas miracle. I turned off the phone. Around noon, I heard a car crunching up the driveway. Through the window, I saw my mother's sedan. She got out, clutching a foil-covered pie, her best coat buttoned against the cold. I opened the door before she could knock. "Hi, Mom." She looked older than I remembered. Smaller. The confident woman who dismissed me from Christmas looked uncertain now, almost frightened. "I brought apple pie," she said. "Your favorite." "Thank you. Come in." We sat in the lodge's living room, the pie untouched on the coffee table between us. My mother looked around, taking in the grand space, the expensive furniture, the evidence of wealth she'd never imagined I'd possess. "This is incredible," she said. "He really left you all this?" "He did." "Why you?" The question stung, but I understood what she was really asking. "What made you special?" "Because I saw him," I said simply. When he was cold and hungry and invisible, I saw him. I gave him bread and coffee and conversation. Not because I wanted something back, but because it was right. She was quiet for a long moment. I saw the news interviews with the other people he helped. The couple with the adoption money. The boy with the scholarship. She paused. They all said the same thing. That Tomas saw what they needed most and gave it to them. He had a gift for that. "What did you need most, Maura?" The question cracked something open inside me. To be seen. To matter. To be chosen instead of convenient. My mother's face crumpled. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling over. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, baby." We talked for hours. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. She told me about feeling overwhelmed when Grandma got sick, about taking the path of least resistance by leaning on me because I never complained. "You were always so capable," she said. "So understanding. Your brothers needed more attention, more guidance. You just handled things. I took advantage of that." "Yes," I agreed. "You did. Can you forgive me?" I thought about Tomas, about how he'd transformed his grief and failure into generosity, about how he'd chosen to see possibility instead of bitterness. "I'm trying," I said honestly, "but things have to change. I can't be the daughter who gives up everything anymore. I have my own life to build now." She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. And I'll do better. We all will. Through the window, snow began falling again, soft flakes drifting down like grace. There's something I want to do with this place, I said. Tomas asked me to open it once a month to people who need belonging. I'm thinking bigger than that. I want to turn the lodge into a community space. A place where people who feel invisible can come and be seen. My mother smiled, really smiled, for the first time. That sounds perfect. How can I help? 1 year later, I stood in the bakery, now officially renamed the Hearth, and looked at the wooden plaque above the counter. In memory of Tomas Holloway, who taught us that kindness is never wasted, only invested. The bakery had expanded, taking over the empty storefront next door. We now employed 8 people, most of them folks who'd struggled to find work elsewhere. Former inmates, people in recovery, anyone who needed a second chance. The lodge hosted gatherings every weekend, community dinners, support groups, art classes, a warm place for anyone who felt cold and alone. My mother came up once a month to volunteer. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, like making bread, kneading trust back into flour and water, waiting patiently for it to rise. Last night, a young woman had come to the bakery just before closing. She looked exhausted, her coat too thin for winter, her eyes holding that particular emptiness of someone who feels invisible. I'd made her coffee and given her warm bread. We'd talked for an hour about nothing and everything. As she left, she'd pressed a crumpled dollar into my hand. Thank you for seeing me. I'd thought of Tomas then, of his words echoing across time. Kindness circles back. The chain continues. Link by link, heart by heart, we build something that outlasts us all.